Calrix Vianor held the latest edition of Morgenson's Universal Travel Compendium in his three-fingered hands, his compound eyes scanning the updated entries with the practiced efficiency of a seasoned explorer. As a travel journalist for the Intersystem Broadcasting Network, he'd visited 417 worlds across 72 sectors. He'd swum in the methane lakes of Torsivian Prime, meditated with the crystalline monks of Helvara, and barely survived the carnivorous flora of the Dendros Belt. But nothing had prepared him for the warning on page 8472. Earth, SO, 3, Travel Advisory Level, Critical. Recommended Visitation Duration, Indefinite. Warning, approximately 94% of non-human visitors who spend more than 72 standard hours on Earth do not voluntarily return to their homeworlds. This phenomenon has been documented for the past 89 Earth years and remains unexplained. Proceed with extreme caution. Calrix read the passage 3 times, his mandibles clicking in disbelief. In his entire career he'd never encountered a level, critical advisory that wasn't related to environmental toxicity, hostile sentience, or gravitational anomalies. This was something else entirely. The entry continued with excerpts from returned visitors, those rare individuals who'd managed to leave. The humans have this substance called coffee. I no longer understand how I functioned without it. Provisional Commander Thex Montroil, Andorian Federation. I went for a cultural exchange mission. I stayed because of something they call friends. My official reports cannot adequately explain. Scholar in Aristellos, Proximan Alliance. They asked me to stay for one more sunset. That was 17 years ago. I regret nothing. Former Ambassador Kixel Nordhaven, Centauri Diplomatic Corps. Calrix set down his datapad and gazed out at the stars streaming past his viewport. His ship, the Wanderer's Chronicle, was currently en route to the Kashari Nebula for a piece on stellar nurseries. But his mind was already made up. He had to investigate this Earth. Neuraxis, he called to his ship's AI. Plot a new course. Destination, Sol System, third planet. Calrix, the AI responded, its voice carrying an unusual note of concern. I must inform you that I've analyzed the statistical data on Earth visitation. The probability of your return is 6.3%. Are you certain? When has probability ever stopped a story? Calrix replied, his translator chip rendering his chittering speech into standard galactic. This is the biggest mystery in the travel industry. Think about it, hundreds of species, thousands of individuals, all choosing to abandon their lives for a single planet. There has to be a rational explanation. Perhaps that is what the 93.7% of non-returning visitors believed as well, Neuraxis observed dryly. 3 weeks later, the Wanderer's Chronicle entered Earth's orbit. Calrix had spent the journey reviewing every piece of available information on humanity and their homeworld. The species was relatively new to galactic society, they'd only achieved faster-than-light travel 43 years ago, but they'd made an immediate impact. Humans were everywhere now. They served on ships, ran restaurants on distant stations, opened cultural centers on worlds that had never heard music before. They were diplomats, soldiers, scientists, artists, and traders. But they all seemed to have one thing in common, an inexplicable ability to make other beings want to stay near them. I'm receiving a hail from Earth Orbital Control, Neuraxis announced. Audio only. Put it through. Unidentified vessel, this is Earth Orbital Traffic Management, Controller Samira Okafor speaking. Please state your designation and purpose. The voice was warm, professional, and distinctly human. This is the Wanderer's Chronicle, Civilian Registry. I'm Calrix Vianor, journalist with IBN. I'm here on assignment to document Earth culture for a travel series. There was a pause, then a soft laugh. Another one. Okay, Mr. Vianor, we're transmitting landing coordinates for the International Xenocultural Center in New Geneva. Fair warning though, you might want to book a long-term hotel. Most visiting journalists end up extending their stays indefinitely. I'll be fine, Calrix assured her, though his confidence wavered slightly. I'm a professional. That's what they all say, Samira replied, and he could hear the smile in her voice. Welcome to Earth, Mr. Vianor. I hope you enjoy your stay, however long it ends up being. As the Wanderer's Chronicle descended through the atmosphere, Calrix activated his recording equipment. Below him, a blue-green marble resolved into continents and oceans, cities glittering like scattered gems across the surface. He'd seen more objectively beautiful worlds, planets with rings of pure crystal, worlds where bioluminescent forests painted the night in colors that had no names. But something about Earth made his dual hearts beat faster. Neuraxis begin recording. Entry log, investigation into the Earth phenomenon. Day 1. He paused, searching for the right words. I don't know what I'm going to find down there. But I intend to document everything and return with the truth. Acknowledged, Neuraxis said quietly. Though I am updating my backup protocols. Just in case you don't. The ship touched down on the landing pad and Kelrix gathered his equipment. Through the viewport he could see humans moving about, along with Centaurians, Valkyrie, and at least 3 species he didn't immediately recognize. All of them had chosen to stay. He activated the airlock, stepped into the decontamination field and prepared to discover why. The air hit Kelrix first, not the sterile, filtered atmosphere of controlled environments he'd expected, but something rich and complex. His sensory organs cataloged dozens of scents simultaneously: vegetation, water, something cooking, and underneath it all, the distinctive biochemical signatures of countless living beings. Mr. Vienor? A human woman approached, her hand extended in the universal gesture of greeting that humanity had somehow convinced half the galaxy to adopt. I'm Dr. Yuki Tanaka, director of the Xenocultural Center. We've been expecting you. Kelrix carefully clasped her hand, mimicking the up and down motion he'd studied. Dr. Tanaka. Thank you for accommodating my research visit. Please call me Yuki. She smiled, and Kelrix noticed the way the expression transformed her entire face, another peculiar human trait. We've prepared quarters for you in the visitor's wing. I assume you'll want to start with official interviews and cultural sites. Actually, Kelrix activated his recording drone, I'd prefer to experience Earth as an ordinary visitor would. The true story is always in the details others overlook. Yuki's smile widened. I think you'll fit in perfectly here. Come on, let's get you settled. Have you eaten? Our cafeteria serves cuisine from 40 different worlds, but I have to warn you, most visitors end up trying human food eventually. I brought my own nutrition supplements, Kelrix assured her, patting his supply pack. That's what Jarek said too, Yuki replied, leading him toward the main building. He's a Valkyrie nutritionist who came to study Earth's agricultural diversity. That was 8 years ago. He now runs the most popular fusion restaurant in the city. They entered the facility, and Kelrix's attention was immediately captured by the central atrium. It was a soaring space filled with natural light, living plants growing in seemingly chaotic abundance, and beings from across the galaxy moving together in an intricate dance of daily life. A Centaurian was teaching a group of humans some kind of meditative practice. 2 Proximan children, played with human younglings, their translator chips converting their laughter into something universal. This is impossible, Kelrix murmured, his drone capturing everything. I've been to unified worlds, peaceful stations, but this level of integration, it shouldn't work. Different biochemistries, incompatible social structures, evolutionary imperatives. Should make it impossible, I know, Yuki said. But somehow it does work. Come on, your quarters are this way. The room Yuki showed him was simple but comfortable, with adjustable environmental controls and furniture that could adapt to various physiologies. A window overlooked a park where humans and aliens alike were engaged in recreational activities. I'll let you get settled, Yuki said. The cafeteria is on the 2nd floor, and there's a welcome mixer tonight at 1900 hours if you're interested. No pressure though, we know the travel can be exhausting. After she left, Kelrix spent an hour unpacking and reviewing his notes. Then his curiosity got the better of him. He needed to see more. The corridors of the center were busy with evening activity. Kelrix followed the flow of beings toward the cafeteria, his recording equipment documenting everything. The smell of food grew stronger, and more enticing than he wanted to admit. The cafeteria was chaos in the best possible way. Stations offered everything from synthesized nutrients to elaborate dishes from hundreds of worlds. But it was the human food section that had the longest line, with beings from across the galaxy waiting patiently. First time trying Earth food? A voice beside him spoke in perfect Valkyrie. Kelrix turned to find a tall Valkyrie male, his scales gleaming with the well-fed sheen of contentment. You must be Jarek, Kelrix replied. Dr. Tanaka mentioned you. Guilty as charged, Jarek's translator chip rendered his pleased hiss into standard. Let me guess, you're here to investigate why no one leaves, planning to stay just a few days, completely certain you'll be different from the rest of us? Kelrix's mandibles clicked in what might have been embarrassment. Is it that obvious? I've seen it before. Come on, you need to try something. What does your biology handle well? I can process most carbon-based proteins, simple carbohydrates. Perfect. You need pizza. 20 minutes later, Calric sat at a table with a slice of something called margarita pizza in front of him. Jarek watched with barely contained amusement. It's just bread, vegetables and processed proteins, Calric said, analyzing the food with his scanner. Analysis doesn't work with human food, Jarek advised. You have to experience it. Calric took a careful bite. The flavors exploded across his sensory palate, the tang of tomatoes, the richness of cheese, the perfect char on the crust, and underneath it all, something he couldn't quite identify. It wasn't just sustenance, it was pleasure. Simple, uncomplicated enjoyment. Well? Jarek asked. I may need another slice. For research purposes. Jarek laughed, a sound that mixed his natural hissing with the learned human expression of joy. That's what I said. Then I said it again. Then I stopped pretending it was research and admitted I just liked it. As Calric reached for his second slice, he noticed something strange. He was happy. Not the satisfaction of a good story or the thrill of discovery, but a warm, contented feeling that had nothing to do with his mission. It had been less than 4 hours and Earth was already getting under his carapace. By his third day on Earth, Calric had interviewed 47 non-returning aliens and documented hundreds of hours of cultural interactions. Yet he was no closer to understanding the mechanism behind Earth's gravitational pull on visitors, and worse, he was starting to understand it intimately. You're overthinking it, said Marcus Reeves, a human anthropologist who'd volunteered to be Calric's guide. They were walking through what Marcus called a farmer's market, a completely inefficient distribution system where producers sold directly to consumers in an open-air setting. It should have been obsolete. Instead, it was packed. Overthinking is my profession, Calric replied, his drone capturing the scene. There has to be a logical explanation. Mass psychological manipulation? Pheromones? Undiscovered technology? Marcus laughed, stopping at a stall selling fresh fruit. Want to try a peach? I don't. But the vendor, an elderly human woman with kind eyes, was already selecting one. First time trying Earth fruit, honey? Oh, you're in for a treat. Here, this one's perfect. She handed Calric the fruit without asking for payment. When he tried to offer credits, she waved him off. First one's free, sweetheart. Welcome to Earth. Calric bit into the peach cautiously. Juice ran down his mandibles. The flavor was, he didn't have words. Sweet, complex, alive in a way his nutrition supplements never were. Good, right? The woman beamed. I grew these myself. Nothing like that replicated stuff. How much for a case? Calric heard himself ask. Marcus's knowing smile told him everything. And so it begins. That afternoon, Calric attended what humans called a coffee shop. His research indicated these were simple establishments serving a caffeinated beverage, but the reality was far more complex. The shop, the Cosmic Bean, was run by a Centaurian named Vex Stellaron, one of the earlier non-returners. Calric, Yuki told me you'd probably stop by, Vex called out, his forearms expertly managing multiple brewing devices. What can I get you? Fair warning, coffee is why I'm still here. Just the standard preparation, please? No such thing, Vex replied cheerfully. But I'll start you with an Ethiopian blend. Medium roast, pour-over method. Trust me. The shop was full of beings from across the galaxy, most working on datapads or engaged in quiet conversation. The atmosphere was calm yet energized, productive yet relaxed. Calric found a seat and activated his recording equipment. Vex brought the coffee personally. Here you go. And before you ask, yes, I came to Earth to negotiate a trade agreement. That was 12 years ago. The agreement was signed in 3 weeks. I stayed for this. He gestured around the shop. A beverage establishment? Community, Vex corrected. See that Proximan in the corner? She's a quantum physicist at the university. The human next to her is a mechanic. They've been meeting here for coffee every Tuesday for 6 years. Different worlds, different fields, but they're friends. Real friends. That doesn't happen other places. Calric took a sip of the coffee. It was hot, bitter, complex, and immediately he understood why Vex's diplomatic career had ended here. This wasn't just a drink. It was ritual, connection, a reason to gather. I need to interview more subjects, Calric said, but his voice lacked conviction. This can't just be about food and beverages. It's not, Vex agreed. Stay for tonight's open mic. You'll see. The open mic started at 1900 hours. Calric stayed, telling himself it was for research. Beings from various worlds took turns on the small stage, singing, reciting poetry, performing comedy, sharing stories. Most of it was terrible by any objective standard. A Valkyrie attempted human-style stand-up comedy with minimal success. A human teenager sang off-key while playing a stringed instrument. But the audience loved every moment. They cheered, they laughed, they encouraged even the most fumbling performances. There was no judgment, no hierarchy, just beings supporting each other's attempts at creative expression. "We're up," Marcus said suddenly. "What?" "I signed us up. Come on." Before Kelrix could protest, Marcus was pulling him toward the stage. "Just follow my lead. This is a duet I learned from my Andorian partner." The music started, some kind of ballad about journeys and homecomings. Marcus sang in his clear human tenor, and somehow, impossibly, Kelrix found himself joining in. His translator chip converted his clicks and chittering into melodic tones that harmonized with Marcus's voice. He'd never sung before. His species didn't have a musical tradition. But here he was, performing for an audience of aliens and humans who clapped and cheered as if it were the most natural thing in the universe. When they finished, a human woman approached. "That was beautiful. I'm Sarah Chin, I run an interspecies choir. We practice Thursdays. You should come." "I'm only here temporarily," Kelrix said automatically. Sarah's smile was gentle, knowing. "That's okay. Come to one practice. If you don't like it, no pressure." As Kelrix walked back to the center that night, his arms full of peaches and his mind buzzing with coffee and music, he realized he'd been on Earth for 3 days and hadn't filed a single report to his network. He told himself he'd do it tomorrow. He was starting to understand why people didn't leave. "Your network has sent 17 messages," Neuraxis informed Kelrix on the morning of his 8th day on Earth. "Your editor is threatening to send a recovery team." Kelrix looked up from his datapad, where he'd been reading about something called community gardens. "Tell them I'm conducting deep investigative research. I'll file my report soon." "You said that 3 days ago. And 4 days before that." "I mean it this time." "Kelrix," the AI's voice carried an unusual emotion, concern. "I've been analyzing your behavioral patterns. Your dopamine analog levels are 47% higher than baseline. You've attended 6 social gatherings, joined 2 clubs, and yesterday you agreed to help a human named Margaret plant tomatoes. These are not the actions of an objective journalist. I'm embedded in the culture. It's proper methodology. It's assimilation. This is exactly what the travel guide warned about." Kelrix set down his datapad. His ship was right, of course. He'd come to document a phenomenon, and instead he was becoming part of it. But understanding that intellectually and acting on it were entirely different matters. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Kelrix? It's Yuki. You decent. Come in." Yuki entered with a tall Andorian male, his blue skin marked with the facial ridges distinctive to his species. "This is Commander Thex Montroil. He's been on Earth for 23 years. I thought you two should meet." Thex extended his hand in the human fashion, which Kelrix had now learned perfectly. "Dr. Tanaka mentioned you're investigating why we don't leave. I was hoping to save you some time." "I appreciate that, Commander. Just Thex now. I resigned my commission 16 years ago." He settled into a chair with the ease of someone completely comfortable in his surroundings. "I know what you're looking for, the hook, the trick, the mechanism. Some rational explanation for why Earth keeps us." "And is there one?" Thex smiled. "Yes and no. Let me tell you what happened to me. I came to Earth as part of the Andorian military's cultural exchange program. 2-week assignment, assess human military readiness, file a report, leave. Simple. But you didn't leave." "No." "The second day, my liaison officer, a human colonel named Patricia Donovan, invited me to her home for dinner. It seemed appropriate for diplomatic relations, so I accepted." Thex's eyes grew distant with memory. Her family was there. Her parents, her sister's family, her children. They'd prepared Andorian dishes from a database, terribly, I might add. The spicing was completely wrong. "I don't understand how that convinced you to stay." "It didn't. What convinced me was when Patricia's mother noticed I wasn't eating much. She sat down next to me, apologized for getting the recipes wrong, and asked me to teach her the right way. So we spent 3 hours in her kitchen, her entire family crowding around, learning to make proper Andorian food. They were genuinely interested. Not because it would benefit them, not for diplomatic advantage, they just wanted to know about my culture because I was their guest and they wanted me to feel welcome." Kelrix felt something tighten in his chest. He'd experienced similar moments: the vendor at the market, Sarah's choir invitation, Marcus's easy friendship. "The next day," Thex continued, Patricia asked if I wanted to join her family's weekly game night. Then she invited me to her daughter's school presentation. Then to a neighborhood barbecue. Before I knew it, I had people who cared about me. Not about my rank, not about what I could offer, they cared about me as a person. That doesn't happen in Andorian society. We're too regimented, too focused on duty and hierarchy. So it's the social connections, Kelrick said, his journalistic instincts finally finding purchase. Humans create artificial kinship bonds with outsiders. Artificial. Thex's tone sharpened. Kelrick's, I've been married to Patricia for 19 years. I've raised her children as my own. I've celebrated birthdays and mourned losses and built a life here. There's nothing artificial about it. Yuki stepped in gently. What Thex is trying to say is that humans don't distinguish between real and artificial connections the way some species do. To them, if you care about someone and they care about you, that's real. Period. But that should make them vulnerable to exploitation, Kelricks protested. Opening themselves to strangers, creating bonds without verification of mutual benefit. Oh, it does, Thex agreed. Humans get hurt all the time. They trust people who betray them, they love people who leave them, they open their hearts and sometimes get them broken. But they do it anyway. Do you know why? Kelrick shook his head. Because the alternative, living without connection, without trust, without love, is worse. Humans would rather risk pain than guarantee loneliness. After they left, Kelrick sat in silence, his recording equipment forgotten. He thought about his homeworld, where relationships were primarily transactional. He thought about his career, built on observation rather than participation. He thought about the loneliness he'd never acknowledged because he'd never known anything different. His communicator chimed. Margaret, the human from the community garden, had sent a message. Plants are looking great. Same time tomorrow? Kelrick stared at the message for a long time. Then he responded, I'll be there. The International Xenocultural Center hosted a festival on Kelrick's 15th day on Earth, a celebration of something humans called the autumn equinox. Every culture represented at the center contributed traditions, creating a chaotic fusion that should have been incomprehensible but somehow worked. Kelricks found himself helping Margaret and her husband Tom set up the community garden's harvest display. Real vegetables, grown in actual dirt, arranged with care on tables decorated with leaves and gourds. You've got a good eye for composition, Tom commented as Kelricks adjusted a particularly attractive squash. Ever considered taking up photography? I'm a journalist. I document things professionally. That's different from photography, Margaret said, tying ribbon around bundles of herbs. Photography is about capturing feeling, not just facts. You should talk to Nia. She runs workshops every Sunday at the Art Center. I won't be here on Sunday, Kelrick said automatically. I need to return to my assignment soon. Margaret and Tom exchanged a look, the same knowing glance Kelricks had seen on dozens of Earth residents. They didn't argue. They never argued. They just smiled and continued working, leaving the decision entirely up to him. That was perhaps the most insidious thing about Earth. No one pressured you to stay. They just made leaving increasingly unthinkable. The festival began at sunset. Kelrick's recording drone captured everything: the Centaurian fire dancers, the Valkyrie poetry recitation, the human children teaching alien younglings a game called tag. Food from across the galaxy filled dozens of tables, free for anyone to sample. You're avoiding your ship, aren't you? Kelricks turned to find Jarek approaching with 2 cups of something warm and spiced. What makes you say that? Because I did the same thing. My ship AI used to contact me daily, reminding me of my research deadlines. Then weekly. Then monthly. Eventually, I had to be honest with myself. Jarek handed him one of the cups. Try this spice cider. Very autumn equinox. The drink was sweet, warming, perfect for the cooling evening air. When did you admit you weren't leaving? When I realized I was making plans for next year. I'd signed a lease on an apartment, enrolled in a cooking course that ran for 6 months, agreed to be in my friend's wedding the following spring. I was building a life, not conducting research. I'm not, Kelricks began then stopped. He'd joined Sarah's choir with practices every Thursday. He'd committed to helping Margaret with the winter planting. He'd agreed to help Marcus with a lecture series starting next month. Oh. Yeah, Jarek said sympathetically. Oh. Music started, a human band playing something with drums and stringed instruments. Beings of all species began to dance, each moving according to their own physiology but somehow creating a cohesive whole. Kelricks watched a human woman teaching a Proximan the basic steps, both of them laughing as they stumbled through the movements. The thing about Earth, Jurek said quietly, is that it gives you something most of us didn't even know we were missing. Purpose. Community. The sense that your existence matters to people beyond your utility. That's not logical. We all have purposes in our societies. Do we? I was a nutritionist. My job was to ensure optimal caloric intake for Valkyrie soldiers. Important work, necessary work. But was I valued as a person or as a function? Here people care that I'm happy. They celebrate my successes not because they benefit from them, but because they care about me. A human child ran past, chasing an Andorian youngster, both shrieking with joy. Following them was Thex, now dressed casually in what humans call jeans and a sweater, calling out laughing warnings about watching where they ran. He looks happy, Kelrix observed. He is happy. And before you say it, yes, he could have been happy as a commander. Maybe. But here he gets to be happy as himself. Not as a rank, not as a representative of his species, just as Thex. That's the gift Earth gives us. That night, Kelrix returned to his quarters and finally activated his communication array. His editor's face appeared, displaying the cranial ridges and eye stalks of a Morgellian. Kelrix, finally. We were about to send a retrieval team. Where's your report? I'm still gathering information. It's been over 2 weeks. You were supposed to do a quick expose on the Earth phenomenon, not disappear into it. We need content, Kelrix. Our viewers are waiting. Kelrix looked at his recording equipment, terabytes of footage documenting daily life on Earth. Birthday parties and coffee shops, gardens and game nights, music and meals and mundane conversations that somehow felt profound. I can send you preliminary footage, Kelrix said slowly. But I need more time for analysis. This is more complex than I anticipated. His editor's stalks drooped with frustration. How much more time? I'm not sure yet. Kelrix, you're one of our best journalists. Don't let this planet do to you what it's done to everyone else. You're better than this. After the call ended, Kelrix sat in darkness, his dual hearts beating in irregular rhythm. He could leave. He could compile his footage into a report, return to his ship, resume his career. It would be the logical choice, the professional choice. His communicator chimed. Sarah, choir practice tomorrow night. We're learning approximate harmony cycle. So excited for you to hear it. Below that, Margaret, Tom made too much soup. Want to come over for dinner? Below that, Marcus, movie night Friday? They're showing a classic Earth film with cultural commentary. Kelrix stared at the messages, these tiny threads connecting him to people who had somehow become important to him in just over 2 weeks. He was at the point of no return and he knew it. Neuraxis initiated the conversation on Kelrix's 21st day on Earth. We need to discuss your power reserves. The Wanderer's Chronicle requires maintenance that cannot be performed planetside. Kelrix looked up from the book a human had lent him, an actual physical book made of paper about something called sustainable agriculture. How long do we have? 3 weeks before critical systems begin degrading. However, I recommend departing within 10 days to ensure safe travel. 10 days. The words settled over Kelrix like a physical weight. In 10 days he would need to choose, leave Earth and return to his career, or stay and become another statistic in the travel guide's warning. Acknowledged, Kelrix said quietly. That afternoon he met Marcus for their regular coffee at the Cosmic Bean. Vex noticed something in Kelrix's demeanor immediately. Ship maintenance? The Centaurian asked, setting down their drinks. That obvious? I've seen that look before. Usually around the 3-week mark. Vex settled into a chair across from them. What's the time frame? 10 days. Marcus stirred his coffee thoughtfully. What are you going to do? I don't know, Kelrix admitted. Logically I should leave. I have a career, responsibilities, a reputation. But. Marcus prompted. But I've been happier in these 3 weeks than in the previous 43 years combined. The admission felt dangerous, like acknowledging a weakness. My species doesn't prioritize happiness. We prioritize efficiency, productivity, achievement. And how's that working out? Vex asked gently. Kelrix thought about his life before Earth. Hotels on strange worlds, brief encounters with beings he'd never see again, stories filed and forgotten, always moving, never staying. Successful by every professional metric. Hollow in ways he'd never examined. I had a conversation with my clutchmate last week, Kelrix said. Formal status update, we do them quarterly. I told him about the choir, the garden, my friends here. He was confused why I was wasting time on activities with no clear purpose or advancement potential. What did you say? Marcus asked. Nothing. I didn't know how to explain that the pointless activities are the only things that feel meaningful anymore. Vex's expression was knowing. The thing about Earth is that it forces you to confront what you actually value versus what you've been told to value. It's uncomfortable. Most of us spent our whole lives believing that purpose came from achievement, status, professional success. Then we come here and discover that meaning can come from teaching a child to plant seeds, or singing badly with friends, or sharing a meal with people who actually care if we're happy. But those things don't contribute to galactic society, Kelrix protested weakly. They don't advance knowledge or create wealth or... They create human beings who are whole, Marcus interrupted. And whole beings do better work, have better ideas, build better societies. Earth doesn't devalue achievement. We have plenty of that. We just don't think achievement is worth sacrificing everything else. That evening, Kelrix attended choir practice. They were preparing for a winter concert. Music from 8 different worlds, arranged for mixed species voices. Kelrix had never sung before coming to Earth. Now he found himself looking forward to these Thursday evenings, to the way his voice blended with others in something larger than himself. Before we start, Sarah announced, I want to recognize that several of our members will be making decisions about extended stays soon. She looked directly at Kelrix. Whatever you choose, know that you've become part of our family. That doesn't change whether you stay or go. The practice was bittersweet. Every harmony felt precious, every shared laugh edged with potential loss. Kelrix realized he was memorizing details. The way the Andorian soprano held her high notes, the human tenor who always came in half a beat early, the Proximan bass whose subsonic frequencies made Kelrix's carapace vibrate pleasantly. After practice, a human named David approached. Hey Kelrix. Some of us are going for late-night breakfast at Marina's Diner. Want to come? It was a mundane invitation to a mundane activity. 6 months ago, Kelrix would have declined, filed his reports, moved on to the next story. Now he found himself saying yes, found himself in a booth at 2,300 hours eating something called waffles, while debating the merits of various science fiction shows with beings from 5 different worlds. I still think Babylon 5 had the best long-form storytelling, the Proximan insisted. Please, David countered. Deep Space Nine revolutionized the genre. They argued good-naturedly while Kelrix recorded nothing, analyzed nothing, just existed in the moment. And realized, with sudden clarity, that this was what he'd been searching for in 417 worlds across 72 sectors. Not the extraordinary. The ordinary. Not the exotic. The familiar. Not the achievement. The belonging. When he returned to his quarters at 0200, he found a message from his editor. Final deadline. 1 week. Send the story or send your resignation. Kelrix stared at the message for a long time. Then he opened a new file and began to write, not the expose his network expected, but the truth he'd discovered. A truth about what it meant to be happy. A truth about what it meant to be home. Kelrix stood in the landing bay beside the Wanderer's Chronicle, his packed equipment at his feet. After 4 weeks on Earth, the ship looked smaller than he remembered, the cockpit designed for solitary travel suddenly seeming cramped and lonely. Final maintenance complete, Neuraxis reported. All systems optimal for departure. Shall I begin launch sequences? Not yet. A crowd had gathered, something Kelrix hadn't expected. Margaret and Tom with fresh vegetables from the garden. Jarek with a care package of coffee beans and brewing equipment. Sarah with a recording of the choir's latest practice. Marcus, Yuki, Thex, David, and dozens of others he'd come to know over the past month. You're really doing this, Marcus said, and there was no judgment in his voice, only sadness. I am, Kelrix replied, though his conviction wavered. I've completed my research. My network is expecting the story. The story, Yuki repeated softly. Is that what you're calling it? Kelrix activated his data pad, pulling up the article he'd written. I've documented everything. The social mechanisms, the cultural integration protocols, the psychological factors that make Earth so attractive to visitors. It's comprehensive, objective, exactly what they asked for. But is it true? Thex asked. The question hung in the air. Kelrix looked at his article again, thousands of words analyzing Earth's appeal in clinical terms. Dopamine responses to novel cuisine. Oxytocin bonds formed through communal activities. Social structures that fulfilled evolutionary needs for tribal belonging. All accurate. All factual. All missing the point entirely. I don't know how to write the truth, Kelrix admitted. How do I explain to beings who've never experienced it what it feels like to have people who care about you? How do I quantify the value of a friend who brings you soup when you're sick, or the feeling of singing in harmony with others, or the simple peace of growing something with your own hands? Maybe, Sarah suggested gently, you don't. Maybe some things can't be explained, only experienced. Calrix's communicator chimed, his editor demanding an update. He looked at the message, then at the faces surrounding him. Every one of these beings had made the same choice he was struggling with now. Everyone had chosen Earth over whatever they'd left behind. Can I ask you all something? Calrix said. Do any of you regret staying? The responses came immediately, overlapping. Not for a second. Best decision I ever made. I'd make the same choice again tomorrow. Vex stepped forward. Calrix, when I first arrived, I thought I was giving up my career, my status, everything I'd worked for. And technically I was. But what I gained, he gestured at the group, this community, this life, this sense of purpose, it was worth everything I left behind. But what about advancement? Calrix protested. What about achievement, legacy, making a mark on the galaxy? Who says we aren't? Margaret challenged. Tom and I have taught 47 non-human sustainable farming techniques that they're bringing to their colonies. Vex is training the next generation of interspecies diplomats. Sarah's choir has performed on 6 different worlds, spreading music as a universal language. We're still making our marks, we're just doing it from a place of contentment instead of desperation. Calrix looked at his ship again. Inside was everything familiar. His old life, his reputation, his carefully constructed career. Safe. Predictable. Lonely. He thought about the travel guide's warning. Visit Earth only if you don't intend to come back. Finally he understood. Earth didn't trap people. It didn't manipulate or coerce. It simply showed them a different way of existing. One where community mattered more than achievement, where relationships were valued over status, where being happy was considered just as important as being successful. And once you'd experienced that, how could you go back to anything less? Neuraxis, Calrix said quietly, cancel the launch sequence. Calrix. I know. But I'm not leaving. The AI was silent for a long moment. Then, I anticipated this outcome. I've already begun processing my resignation from IBN's fleet. If you're staying, so am I. The crowd erupted in cheers. Margaret hugged him with a force that would have alarmed him a month ago but now felt perfect. Marcus clapped him on the back. Sarah was already talking about the winter concert. Vex promised to teach him advanced brewing techniques. That night, Calrix sent his final message to his editor. I cannot send the story you requested because I cannot adequately explain Earth's appeal from outside it. The travel guide's warning is accurate. Visitors don't return because Earth gives us something worth staying for. I've decided to become one of the statistics. Consider this my resignation. He attached one final piece of content. A simple video of the autumn festival, unprofessored and unedited. Beings of all species dancing together, sharing food, laughing, living. No analysis, no explanation, just the truth, plain and unadorned. 3 months later, Calrix sat in the Cosmic Bean, working on his new project. A book about interspecies community building based on Earth's model. Through the window he could see snow beginning to fall, the first of winter. His communicator chimed. Another journalist inquiring about the Earth phenomenon, asking for an interview. Calrix smiled and began typing his response. Come visit. But I warn you, you might not leave. Outside, Margaret waved as she passed, carrying seedlings for the spring planting they'd do together. Marcus called to remind him about game night. Sarah sent the program for next week's concert. Calrix had traveled 417 worlds across 72 sectors, always searching for the next story, the next adventure, the next achievement. He'd finally found what he'd been looking for all along. He'd found home.